gentlemen, we're coming at you live from episode 121 of Life on the Rocks with your host, Connor LaRocque. Today's featured guest in the hot seat is Robert Greene. Robert, how are you today?
I'm fine. How are you, Connor?
Oh, I'm doing really well. Honestly, I'm glad to have you in the hot seat today. For anybody that doesn't know Robert, this gentleman is a world-renowned author. He's a New York Times bestseller of the book, The 48 Laws of Power, if you've heard of it. He also just came out with a new book called The Daily Laws. So we have it right here. It has a wealth of knowledge in it. To get us started and start the interview off, Robert, let's talk about the book. So tell us a little bit about the book, what got it started, and we'll jump into it right there.
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with Ryan Holiday. Ryan Holiday has a book called The Daily Stoic, and he sort of gave me the idea for this. And the concept is, the philosophy behind it, let me put it that way, is all of my books, if there's one theme that kind of is constant throughout them, it's the power that your attitude has for shaping your life. And that attitude can be positive or it can be negative, optimistic or pessimistic. But how you look at the world kind of determines what happens to you. And the attitude that I think is the most powerful of all is what I call a radical realist attitude, where you're able to look inside of yourself, for instance, and kind of understand who you are, what makes you different, what makes you unique, what your source of power is as an individual, where you're not listening to what other people say who you are and what your limits are, but you understand yourself in a deep way. Then there's the realistic attitude towards other people. You don't kind of project onto them the emotions. You don't see in them what you wish to see, but you're able to kind of see them who they are, whether for better or for worse. You can kind of distinguish the toxic characters that are out there from those who aren't. And so that kind of realism is very powerful, because if not, you're going to be constantly hiring the wrong people. You're going to be partnering with the wrong people. You're going to be getting in relationships with the wrong people. And the final aspect of this attitude is seeing the world in a realistic way. So understanding what's happening in your industry, in your business, the trends that are currently kind of taking shape in the world. So you have that attitude where you see yourself and others in the world. It's immensely powerful, right? Immensely powerful what you can do with that. And those ideas are scattered throughout six of my books. And I wanted to be able to put it into one book to kind of immerse you in this way of thinking. So I would take excerpts, because frankly, my books they're not long, but I kind of go into things in detail with stories, etc. And in this book, I wanted to give you kind of a short, straight shot of what this philosophy is all about. So it's in the form of a calendar. Every day of the year has some extract that is kind of grounding you in this realistic attitude that I just discussed. And the idea is, when you go through the whole book, you can go through it day by day, starting whenever you get it. It's going to kind of work inside of you and alter how you look at the world. And it's considered, I'm calling it kind of meditations on power, seduction, strategy, etc., which is sort of the themes of my various books. And the idea is, if you kind of meditate on these every day, if you take the thought with you in the course of your day about how to deal with people, about how to look at your own career decisions, etc., it's going to have a kind of unconscious effect. It's going to slowly become part of your own attitude towards life. I'm trying to be someone who's very practical. I don't write books to amuse or entertain people or to kind of make money. I write books to change your life, to put your life on a different course, right? So this book is designed in a very concrete way to kind of immerse you and have a practical effect. And then also it introduces you to my work. So if you're new to it, you'll get a nice sense of, well, maybe this is a book that I want to read. I want to read the real version, the 48 Laws of Power, etc. So that's kind of what this book is about.
Well, that's really good. And that's a great analysis as well. And it's one of those things too, where, again, I've read several of your books and you really go into detail. It's like three-pronged, everything you do, where you come in with the full, the history behind something, then you go into an analysis and you break it down, you have the quotes and everything that rolls with it. Talking about change management and things like that. So, a lot of the time the belief is that you have to go through a traumatic experience to create change. How does your book impact that, where you don't have to go into, these extreme situations to to create that breakthrough or that change in your life. Can you walk us through that a little bit? How this will unconsciously help kind of program and change you?
Well, traumatic experiences definitely can have a powerful effect on you, but they can also have a very negative effect on you. So it's how you enter them and how you look at them and how you deal with them. But we are basically creatures of habit, right? And those habits can go in one of two directions. Those habits can kind of sink you into routines and into conventional ways of thinking and to being kind of ridden with fears, et cetera. You don't want to go outside of your little circle. But then there are habits that build discipline, that build self-control, that build skills in whatever your career is, right? Those are the habits that you want. They create momentum in life. So you've got to switch that around. And this is a book that's designed on a day-to-day level to kind of alter your habits. In a very generic sense, I'm training you every day to think about yourself, right? So you can't just ignore what I'm saying, but you have to so some of the thoughts are kind of strong and they're going to kind of maybe shake you a little bit and you're going to wonder about them, but they're going to stay in your mind because you won't be able to forget them. And so as this happens day by day by day, you're going to be building a habit of reflecting on yourself, on reflecting on who you are, where you're going in your life, right? And then, so for instance, another thing is a lot of the traumatic experiences that occur in our day-to-day affairs come from people that are very toxic.
Right.
And that's a main theme in my book. You hire someone and then you realize later that they're this raging narcissist, or they're very aggressive or passive aggressive, or they don't work very hard. And they embroil you in all kinds of traumas and dramas that suck up all of your energy, that suck up your joy, etc. So the main thing you want in life is to be able to recognize these people and avoid them, right? And that is a habit of thinking where normally in life, we judge people based on their appearances, based on their charm, based on their glittering resume, and the things that we can see. And I want to train you to look behind the masks, to look behind the smiles that people have, and to kind of see through them and see into their character. And that's a skill that you develop. It doesn't come naturally to us. And this is a book that's going to ground you in that skill of how to read people and decipher what's really going on behind their masks.
Okay, that's a really great analysis too. I was going to ask you, rate based on that. So being able to see the cracks in the mask, like you said, if you go to a restaurant and all of a sudden, they're very nice to you, but then they treat the waiter like garbage in a lot of ways. My question to you, so one of the questions I want to ask, so what would be some practical tips that we can do today to start to read people and build those habits so that, we're not just looking at their charm, we're not just looking at them where, oh, you dress nice, or you have nice shoes, or you have a great appearance. Like, what would be some of those practical tips to start to build those habits, Robert?
Okay, well, first of all, it's not necessarily bad to look at how people dress, or their grooming style or their style, because that does say something about their character. So I'm not saying ignore those kinds of things, but there's obviously you want to look behind and see what that really means. But the main thing, Connor, the most important thing of all, the first step in all of this is to first be aware of the problem. So you're going through life and you're basically not judging people based on their character. You're not paying attention to the signs and the patterns that people reveal in their life, right? You're kind of operating blindly. So just take a step back and assess that, for instance. So you go through a process, look at the person that you're in an intimate relationship with, for instance, or your colleagues at work, or your friends. And in the present moment, kind of step back and analyze and think about how you judge them and what it is that kind of you like about them and what you don't like about them, and sort of see how maybe you've made mistakes in the past, going through the past and digging up people that you completely misjudged, right? So I want you to develop the awareness that you have a problem. It's like in AA, you just have to admit, I'm an alcoholic. Everybody stands up and says, I'm an alcoholic. I want you to stand up and say, I am a bad judge of character, okay? You literally do that. And then now we can start building the skills for becoming a better judge of character, all right? So that's the first thing. And most people never get to that point because they assume that they're brilliant at understanding people or whatever. Okay. The next step is appearances can be deceptive. So you have to understand this concept that a person who, let's say, is toxic or who has a weakness and insecurity, they learn at a very early age, 5 or 6 or 7 years old, or maybe a little bit older, how to disguise that, right? So if you're very narcissistic, but you have ambition, which a lot of people in the world are like, you know, a lot of CEOs can be very narcissistic, and I've worked for them, right?
Right.
Elon Musk, he's a very good leader, but he's extremely narcissistic.
Right.
So people like that, if they want to function in the world, they learn to disguise it, right? So if you have a negative quality, a weakness, people at an early age learn to disguise it. So if you're dealing with someone who's got a very overt trait, like they're very aggressive, they're extremely confident, right? They're incredibly out there to please you and do whatever you want. You have to step back and go, I'm not going to get trapped in their appearances. 9 times out of 10, when people have those kind of overt traits, they are disguising the opposite,
Right.
right? That is how they compensate, how they disguise their weaknesses and insecurities. So if they feel insecure and they lack confidence, they learn to create this persona which they're brimming with confidence, etc. So learn to sort of see behind these kind of very strong traits, and often the opposite is there. The next thing you want to do is you want to train yourself in being a master at looking at people's nonverbal communication, right?
Right.
So you understand a basic principle. People can say anything with words, right? They can say, I love your screenplay. You're looking great today, Connor. I love your podcast. You're amazing, right? But how often is it really real, you know? I mean, you do it, everybody does that the same. I do that as well, right? You're not really very honest about it, okay? So get over the idea that words are what matter the most. They are not. What matters the most are two other things: patterns of behavior, actions, right? They don't lie. So if people in the past have had these kind of history of problems or jobs that they can't hold, or broken relationships, that is much more revealing and eloquent than all the little sweet words they say. The second thing that reveals it is their body language, nonverbal communication. And some psychologists have suggested that maybe about 95% of human communication occurs on a nonverbal level.
Right.
And what happens is nonverbal behavior is of several forms. It's the looks in people's eyes, their facial expressions, their smile, whether it's real or fake, how the face is animated when it's excited or sad, their posture, their body language, how they stand, etc., their tone of voice, whether it's nervous or excited, gestures and things like that. Okay, these are extremely revealing, and you need to pay attention to it. It's like a language, right?
Right.
So you're not, you unconsciously are paying attention to it. You don't know, you're not aware of the fact that if people signal that they're awkward or insecure, you feel it. You feel it in their body language, and it tends to make you awkward and insecure. Okay, so you do have this kind of knowledge. You're just not trusting it, and you're not developing it. And in my book, The Laws of Human Nature, I take you through practical steps on how to be a superior reader of people's body language. The other aspect is in their daily habits. So a common example is somebody who's late. They're perennially late for an appointment, for a date, for an interview, for whatever it is. And then they'll come and they'll say, oh, the traffic was terrible. Oh, my assistant forgot to write it down. They'll come up with all kinds of excuses. But you need to pay attention to the pattern. And often when people are chronically late, it's a kind of passive aggressive behavior. They're almost trying to assert the fact that they are in a superior position. They are making you wait. So pay attention to those details, like whether people are on time, their desk, you know, whether it's organized or not. These say a lot about people's character. On and on. I could go on for hours on this,
Sure.
Connor, because
No.
it's a very important subject, but I'll stop there.
No, for sure. And it's one of those things, and because it's always one of those things in society, a trick that I used to utilize. This was years ago. I learned it from Ty Lopez. It was called the Dark Triad Test. So it's from openpsychometrics.org. And as much as it seems kind of hokey pokey or whatever you want to call it, it would give you your first initial read. You'd be like, because everybody has the innate narcissist. Oh, let's do a personality test on yourself, see what you score. And I used to send it to all my family members, and it was funny. I would start to see that pattern of behavior. I'd be like, okay, he's going to score high on Machiavellianism. This person's a little bit of the psychopathy. This one definitely a narcissist. It was a really cool way to kind of get a first initial read before even knowing someone very well, or if you knew somebody, to see if your thoughts were right. So going based off that, another big thing I think we don't talk about, which we don't see in society, I'm a big proponent in energy. So similar to Tony Robbins, where my quote would be, follow your energy. So start to flow with it. So again, we talk about filling people up with energy, some take it away. Can you walk us through a little bit of that? It's not the physical stuff where, feeling energy off people, where you can see, okay, maybe this person's toxic. Is there anything that you do to kind of read people like that, or feel it, or just stay away, or reassure your assessment? You're like, okay, maybe that person's toxic. They got a really bad energy. Can you walk us through that a little bit on how you feel towards that?
Well, it's some of this stuff is a little bit hard to put into words because it is of a nonverbal nature. And I talk in my first book, The 48 Laws of Power, of something I call infection, where there are people who are going to infect you with their negative energy. And just being around them, you feel kind of drawn into their dramas, right? That's their source of power. They enter your life, they're full of excitement and charm, and they're very interesting and dramatic. And then slowly, they kind of embroil you in all of these dramas. So my little antenna go up when I meet somebody for the first time, and they're very dramatic and they're very theatrical. They love you so much. They think your book is fantastic. You're looking great. I know Tony Robbins is really good at that, but I've met him, and I don't think personally he's like that.
Right.
But when I meet someone like that, my radar is going up. Maybe that's just who they are, and it's okay. But sometimes it means that they're kind of a drama queen or king. The other side of a drama king or queen, because they can be male or female, is they complain a lot, right? That's their energy. You sense in them, I've had so many problems in life, and they kind of wear it on their face. They're like a beaten dog. Oh, everybody has hurt me. I've had the worst bosses. They've treated me so bad. And it goes on and on and on and on. You hear this, and then you go, maybe there's like a pattern here, there, and maybe it's coming from them. And you can kind of sense that in somebody. You can sense that kind of, so there's energy in which people are outward. This is probably the key here, Connor. And that, what I mean by that is, they're locked into you, and you can sense it. Their energy is, they're interested in you. They're interested in your ideas, in who you are, and what matters to you, in your psychology, and they're listening to you. Now, it's not like completely like that because there's a conversation going on, but you sense a degree of engagement, and you can feel that, like they hear what you're saying and they respond to it.
Right.
That is the best energy of all, and that says a lot. The other energy goes the other direction. It's all inward, and you can smell it. They may be talking to you, and you may be talking to them, but you get the sense that it's really just about them, right? They really just want to talk about their own ideas, their own interests. Everything has to kind of gravitate like a black hole. They kind of suck everything into themselves, right? It's all about their stories, their problems, their ideas. That is the kind of energy that is very difficult to deal with and very negative, right? It reveals deep levels of insecurity. So kind of gauge that, kind of whether it's an outward, interested, eyes engaging, focused, listening to you, or whether it's all the eyes are kind of dead and they just really want to kind of talk about themselves. That's sort of the key to deciphering people's energy, I think.
Right. Yeah. Kind of flow with it a little bit and see if it's in one ear and out the other. They're just waiting to respond to you. So on that question, again, I'm changing this up a little bit from my actual structure I put the interview to, because there's a lot of questions rolling right on.
Sure.
This way, honestly, So my question to you would be then, one of the biggest problems in society, specifically with social media and everything you see, is ego. We're
Right.
driven by our ego, our innate narcissist, and things that want to come out. How do we alleviate that and try to kind of find a point of self-actualization, so where we can kind of indifference ourselves to people's problems and we can kind of move forward with that? How do we drop that ego, basically?
Well, it's a very big question, and if I had the ultimate answer, I would be a billionaire, to be honest with you, because boy, would that help a lot of people.
Right.
But, you know, first of all, understand we all have an ego. So don't try and imagine that you don't have it. I have an ego. Robert Greene, I'm an Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm an ego anonymous. I have an ego. It's there. I recognize it. I write a lot of my books about the dark side of human nature, what I call the shadow. You need to recognize it in yourself. So yes, you have an ego as well. It's very, and it drives a lot of your behavior. So it's, first of all, the most important thing is to understand that you have this ego and not to deny it. Okay. The second thing is to where do you channel your energy in life? Okay. So there are two ways to channel that energy. We all, as human beings, want attention from other humans. We all want to be recognized as somebody who's morally good, who's rational, and who's intelligent. Three key aspects, right? We want to feel that other people recognize something good in us. Okay, everybody has that. You can get that attention in one of two ways. If you're insecure, if your ego is dominating you, you're always grabbing in social media. Follow me. I need to buy 10,000 bots on Instagram to put up my numbers. I need to be outrageous and clownish to get attention, right? That's the little ego inside of you squeaking, trying to get attention, okay? The other way to get attention is what you really want. It is the only healthy way to deal with the fact that you have an ego, and that is to put it into your work. So what matters to you is that you figure out the kind of work that you were destined for, the career choice, as an entrepreneur, as a podcaster, as a writer, an athlete, whatever it is, okay? You're going to gain recognition and attention from other people by the level of ambition you have and the quality of your work. So your work is of such a high standard and is so good that people recognize it. So you're the attention that you're receiving from the world that everybody wants. It's the primary motivation of human behavior, because we're a social animal. The attention you receive is for your accomplishments, for your achievements. And that is a much better feeling than being able to post, to have 500,000 followers on Instagram or 1 million followers on TikTok. And you're not creating anything. You're not doing anything. It's just about, entertaining the masses for whatever reason. So if it's based on something contributing to society, making something worthwhile, creating a business that's solid, making, designing buildings, writing books, then that's a healthy form of an ego, right? You're getting attention, but it's based on something real. It's based on what you've done with your life, and you're contributing to the betterment of society. So to me, that's the key way, recognizing that you have it and feeding your ego by kind of stepping away from it and putting it into your work and that energy into creating something. Excuse me.
That is the way to do it too, honestly, in that way where you can focus it and channel it in. One of the biggest things, so if we're talking about ego and trying to transition, something that's really important, I think, in our society that we miss sometimes is that whenever you're feeling down, like my mentality is whenever somebody falls, we pick them up. And it's one of the best ways to get fulfillment when you're trying to help somebody, whatever that looks like. And I feel that's another way, regardless if some might think it's egotistical or not, to kind of break down that ego and put yourself out there for other people. And you always hear that online. Everyone says, I'm here to serve, but a lot of it's just dry in a lot of sense. But I truly think one of the biggest things, especially nowadays, is that this phone's a weapon for positivity, where you, even though it has a lot of negative, where you can actually use it and leverage it to create impact and influence and start to, get around the right networks and people. Can you talk about how giving back has been a huge influence in your life? Because again, your books, and I want the audience out there to know this, to know a little bit of a connection between you and I, Robert, where years ago, before I wrote any of my books, Robert's book, The 50th Law, written with 50 Cent, was the one that created a huge breakthrough in my life. That changed my life. That book, when it came to fear and facing it, the mentality I took forward from that was this thought: fear is just a thought. Thoughts can be changed. And after I read that book, that was the metaphor that I played in my life, where whenever I was in a situation where I was scared or I didn't know, I said, you know what, I'm going to challenge myself today. Let's just try to put yourself out there, talk to that person, try to relate, do these things. So going from that, my point is that basically, or my question is that how has giving back been a huge influence in your life to help you, drop the ego and get a sense of fulfillment from others?
Well, it begins with my first book, The 48 Laws of Power, when I was given the incredible opportunity to write a book. And I was motivated, first of all, because I didn't like the self-help genre. I didn't like how people were writing these books. I didn't think they were really helping. I think they were making a lot of money for the writer because they were not geared towards practical things you could do in your day-to-day life. They weren't kind of reaching to the core of the problem. They were kind of entertaining you with possible things that I didn't think would ever really matter. So when I started the 48 Laws of Power, I wanted to say goodbye to all that. I'm going to write a book designed to literally change your life. Now, that's maybe very ambitious, but that was my goal, right? So yes, it was nice to get money and to have a nice advance. I don't deny that. But that was not the primary motivation for me. And I can say that, I can back that up by the fact when it came time to write my other books, people were kind of clamoring, and my publishers, to just write like a sequel to the 48 Laws of Power, just to kind of make money. And that's never been my motivation. I want to change you. I want to help you in your life, because I know prior to writing books, I had a lot of problems myself. I didn't have success until I was in my very late 30s, almost 40 years old, right? And prior to that, I had worked in many, many different jobs. My girlfriend and I counted there were over 60 different jobs in a relatively short period of time. And it was a very painful experiences. I understand how difficult life can be, because it took me many, many years to have any kind of success. So my motivation was I really, really wanted to help people in some elemental way. And then as the books were out and the years would go by, I started receiving, and I receive emails every day from people saying how much the book has really changed them, how much it has helped them. And I'm talking about all of my books, right? I'm not trying to brag, please don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But it's the most satisfying thing for me. I don't get satisfaction so much from the number of, well, I do like to see how many books I've sold, because that reveals how many people have read me. But I don't get caught up in the money or that. I mean, I have a very comfortable life. But when I get an email from somebody who says, I was headed the wrong direction, and Mastery, my fourth book, really, really helped me make an really important change in the direction of my life, that makes me the happiest person on the planet. I just live for things like that, right? So that's my sense of contribution, is helping people, because I don't think there's enough out in the world right now of really practical advice. It's there's either things that are really academic, which don't have any relevance to our day-to-day experience, yeah,
Right over your head,
or
yeah.
they're too like frothy. They don't go into any depth in anything, and they're just kind of one note ideas about human nature or psychology. And and I think people are hungry for change, right? That's what drives the self-help genre. So my sense of giving back are the emails that I get from people whose lives I've really, really helped, and it's the most satisfying thing for me. And it's a lesson for all of you out there. The best way to give back to people is to contribute, is to do something that helps society, that helps other people, that creates some kind of change in this world. So yeah.
No, I agree with that 100%. And I think too many people are looking for that personal gain when the reality is, and you used to hear this all the time. I think it was Zig Ziglar. You'd see it. He's like, the more people you help, the more it's going to help you. And then I never understood that for the longest time until I got into business and I started getting around people, and you start to see how you can fuel them up. And you're like, at the end of the day, you finish a long day. If you do a charity event or you help someone, you're like, wow, you can see the inspiration, and you're like, that's
Right.
at the end of the day, when you sit back and you look at your life, it's we're in how many people, 7 billion people on this planet, and it's not all about you. And I think too many people they're driving in their car and they're like, yeah, everyone's
Yeah.
thinking about me. And it's not a good mentality, honestly, to get into. What would your advice be? So I want to give a little bit of context to the audience about your background specifically. So what inspired you to start studying human behavior? So again, so your latest book before this one, so The Laws of Human Nature, like what got you into that? And like, I mean, you talk about a wealth of history throughout all of your books. I mean, that's a lot of knowledge you're putting together. Like, what got you inspired by that? And what got you started where you started building up all this knowledge of history and psychology and human behavior?
Well, I don't have any degree. It's not from some university. I'm not like a PhD in psychology or anything like that. I just have a BA from the University of Wisconsin in classics in Greek and Latin. So I have no credentials. But what it comes from is the fact that I've always been a very keen observer of people, going back to my early childhood. And then after I left the University of Wisconsin, and I'm a relatively old guy, at least compared to you, Connor. So we're talking about the late 70s, early 80s,
Right.
back before you were born. Um, I left college and I was pretty naive, like most people are. And I entered the work world, and I started off in journalism in New York, working for magazines. And I wasn't prepared for all the political gamesmanship, for the egos, for all the little kind of manipulative stuff going on. And it kind of hurt me a lot. It was very painful because I wasn't prepared for it, and I made mistakes. And I had this idea that I saw very powerful people in that world in New York and in other places. And I had this idea that power is this kind of language that people who have it kind of understand, where you do certain things and you don't do other things. So for instance, law number 4, always say less than necessary. Powerful people know how to talk a little bit less than other people, so that when they do talk, it's like, whoa, what did he mean by that? Or she mean by that? What are they saying there? Right? So the powerful people kind of had this understanding of what it takes to be powerful, how to be hard when necessary, how to be soft in other times, how to entertain people with compelling spectacles, when it's important to be bold in this world, when is it good to kind of conform to what other people are thinking and save your weird ideas for yourself, how to use your money for generosity purposes to gain allies. Most people don't understand. There's no book written on that, right? There's no book on it, but it's this language that very powerful people learn. Okay, so I had all of this experience in all of these different jobs, and in the daily laws, I cataloged them. I worked in journalism, I worked in Hollywood near LA, I worked in television in London, I worked as a tour guide in Dublin, Ireland, I worked in a hotel in Paris, I worked at a detective agency here in Los Angeles, on and on and on, right? I had a wealth of experience, and I read a lot of history,
Right.
right? So I read a lot about the ancient Greeks because that was my subject, but I love like Renaissance Italy and Machiavelli, who's sort of one of my favorite writers. And I had this idea that nothing has really changed. This is what humans are like, right? These are behaviors that go back hundreds, thousands of years. And I'm going to tell these stories. So when I'm talking about Louis XIV and how he threw a man in prison for his entire life after he threw a party in his honor, and the king felt that the party was great, but that the guy who threw the party was getting more attention than he. In
Right.
other words, he had outshone the master. So I'm talking about Louis XIV, but I'm really talking about your boss right now,
Right.
your world right now. So you took all of this together, where I have all these painful experiences. I'm a very keen observer, and I read a lot of history. and I read a lot of books about biographies of successful people. You put that all together, and I created the experience necessary for writing the 48 Laws of Power. And since then, since the success of that, I have I've been blessed. I've had the opportunity to consult with various powerful people in all different aspects, rappers like 50 and others, entertainers, at famous NBA athletes, etc. I was on the board of directors for a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange. So my level of experience and knowledge has increased because of the success of the 48 Laws of Power. And that's what I think gives me the ability to write what I write. And it's up to the reader is the judge of that. So it doesn't matter if you have a degree in psychology from Yale if nobody reads your book. But if people read my book and it resonates with their experience, that means that I'm on the right track, I think.
No, it's totally true. I think the education system alone, where we put status on these titles and things like that, but then there's really no substance sometimes. I always make the joke when I'm telling people, I'm like, I got my PhD in rejection. From I used to sell door to door actually when I started out of university, where most people go out of university and are going to go off into a career and be a lawyer, and that was the plan. And then I figured, I said, you know what, I'm going to go into the lowest of low, try selling door to door, and you get a really good read for people because they think you're pitching a Bible, or what are you selling, or is it religious? One of those two things. You have to be.
Wow.
I think you'd love this.
Yeah.
I used to watch my brother door to door, and it never made any sense how all of a sudden we'd be here at this door, and then 5 minutes later we're at the kitchen table. It was very profound. You'd be sitting there and just being able to read people and move, and then identify, this is who I am. This is what we're here to do. We're not here, So I took the whole approach in sales. It's not selling, helping, as long as you're not selling garbage. That's kind of the mentality. But no, I respect your approach on that and how you're able to see people and move. And I think right now specifically, that's one of the biggest problems is the education system. We value, some of the things they're teaching. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you, and I'll be honest. Some of the things that I've learned in school, they don't apply to my entrepreneurship or anything I'm doing. It's just dealing with people, being able to handle people at the baseline. And obviously you want to bring the right people in. Quick question for you on that. How do you feel about the current education system right now and what they're teaching? I feel like it's behind 50 to 100 years, the way that we're learning, the things we're learning about. And I mean, you look at COVID-19 as a prime example. Look at all the people that lost jobs because of what happened.
Well, I would say we're 200 years behind time. I would put it even further back. Um, well, so there's various things that you want to accomplish through the education system. And so I don't think it's bad that people study things when you're in school, like math, which for a lot of people, it has no relationship to what I do in life. But what it does teach you is it teaches you how to solve problems, how to think in a certain way. So not everything has to be directly practical to your life, right? But we've gotten away from certain basic things. So, when I went to high school 3,000 years ago, I had to take wood shop, right? I had to take a class in metal making. I don't remember what it was called, like working with electrical stuff, things that I didn't really like at the time. But wow, was that a great experience? Learning how to actually make things with your hands when you happen to be someone who's interested in literature, right? It kind of broadened my experience. And it made me realize, because my dad is really good with his hands. He's not an intellectual type. He was just somebody who could make things. And it made me realize, maybe that's not where I was headed in life. But that kind of practical grounding is really, really important. And so, we're not preparing people for the real world. Not everybody is meant to go to college, right? So what you're going to do, you put yourself in student debt for $50,000, $100,000. It takes you years to recover, and then you never really have anything out of it, right? So, we have to be more practical about this. And a lot of people who are, for my book Mastery, I interviewed a man named Paul Graham. I don't know if people have heard of Paul Graham. He's one of the most successful Silicon Valley investors and entrepreneurs. And he started a business, he's since sold it, called Y Combinator, which was basically an apprentice school for tech startups. And he told me that what he was looking, he would receive like 2,000 applications to be in the program, and he would accept about a dozen or 20 at the most.
Right.
And he said, it's the second he saw somebody had an MBA from Yale, he put it in the trash, right? They're going to be useless.
Right.
Because what determined whether people were successful was their level of energy and drive and determination, how badly they wanted it. And a lot of people like that come from disadvantaged backgrounds. They come from the lower classes or the middle class. They never had anything in life and they want it really, really badly. Okay. So the education system has to kind of be able to feed that a little bit. We need more vocational skills where people learn vocational skills. We can start maybe teaching people a little bit about business and finance earlier on. And, the main thing about education is channeling people towards something that excites them in life and doesn't turn them off from learning throughout their, which is what happens in the education system right now. And there's too much politics involved with it. Learning should be neutral. There shouldn't be a political aspect to it. Like we have to teach people how to think morally about these subjects, right? It should really be about everybody as an individual. They need to find out what excites them and they need to be channeled in that direction somehow. I mean, it's a really messed up system, Connor, to be honest with you. It's one of the it's very irrational how it's not oriented towards kind of goals that we think it is. It would take me decades to kind of unravel the mess that it is, but those were just some of the ideas that I have.
No, it's true. And it's one of those things where it almost suppresses you as well. Like it beats you down where you're just climbing up this never ending ladder. I'll give you an example. I was in a clinical psychology class in university and the teacher told me straight up, she says, Connor, we cannot solve depression, like at all. We can't solve it. And I said, well, you can't solve it at all. Like you can't help it or move it forward. She's like, no, you just have to be empathetic. And I didn't like that answer. I said, well, there's ways to work with people. And obviously it's always going to be something that's going to, happen in your life. But I mean, there's got to be a way to solve it and alleviate it and move it forward. And the mentality was just straightforward. This is it. Can't solve it. Give them prescriptions. This is what you do. And it was disturbing.
Yeah.
It was shocking. I'm sitting there and I'm like, we're supposed to be taught in university or college how to critically think. And then it's like, no, it's the one way or the highway. And,
Right. Yeah. It's not teaching you critical thinking. It's teaching you kind of group think.
totally.
Like it's kind of training you and it's not making you creative or unconventional or anything.
No, 100%. And my question off of that, so talking about individuals that you see a lot of the people that succeed, they're very hungry. Do you believe in luck at any chance? Do you believe there's luck or it's hard work or it's just being there at the right time, destiny, things like that? How do you feel towards luck?
Well, so I can't remember the exact quote, but there was the man who used to be the owner, general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers baseball team who said, luck is like the product of preparation. I'm mangling up his quote, so I shouldn't even mention it. But the idea is this, of course I believe in luck, right? It's, so many things that happen in life you don't prepare for. There's surprises, right? You didn't expect 90 times out of 100 when people who were very successful and you ask them, how did you end up in this particular area? They go, I never really thought I would end up like this. It kind of, things happen in a certain way. Okay. But it's what happens to you when the luck arrives that matters. So I'll give you an example, personal example. By the year 1995, I was pretty much a very unsuccessful person in life. I was 36 years old. I had all these different jobs that I mentioned before. I wasn't going anywhere. My parents were getting really worried about me. And then I met a man in Italy by luck. I was on a job. He was on the same job. Very well could have happened where I never met this man. He was what's called a book packager, which is basically a person who produces books. He's also a designer. And one day we were walking in Venice, Italy, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. It was a very nice day. The sun was shining. And he asked me if I had any ideas for a book. And I had never thought about writing a book before. I've been in Hollywood, etc. And this was the moment of luck. right? It could have never happened. And I was in a good mood and everything was kind of aligned. And I improvised a pitch that turned into the 48 Laws of Power. And then he loved the idea and he goes, I will pay you for a year to write half the book and then we'll sell it together. I go, wow. Okay, so the lesson here is if I had been younger and I didn't have all of my experience, I wouldn't have been ready to take advantage of this incredible opportunity. But when it happened, I recognized it. So sometimes things happen to you and you don't recognize that it's the opportunity of your life because you're too young, you're too inexperienced, you think it should be something else, right? And then I was prepared. I was prepared to actually write a book. I had discipline, I had skill, and more than anything else, I had the determination to make it work because I was already in my mid 30s. If this book doesn't work, I'm going to be a failure the rest of my life. So that's going to drive somebody, right? So luck is extremely important and it gives you a degree of humility. It makes you realize that not everything happens because of your greatness. Things happen, but it's what you do with the luck that matters. It's whether you're prepared and whether you recognize it as the opportunity that it is. Because I can bet you there are people out there who've had great opportunities fall into their lap. They didn't recognize it and they didn't know how to seize it and exploit it because they weren't ready for it. So yeah, luck is very important, but it's what you do with it that matters.
It's true. It's funny. I had an instance one time in my life when I could have got drafted into the big speaker circuit as like the young hype man, let's just say. So I went to a conference and I went on the stage and I was the opening keynote and I bombed. And it was the best.
Yeah.
I bombed. Like I laid it, as my agent, the guy had said, he's like, you laid an egg, like they called, there was bad reviews. And it was the most embarrassing thing. I was in this
Wow.
suit, I walked off and I literally had to go and catch my flight. I called my father. I said, yeah, it didn't go well. He's like, I'm sure it was all right. And but that was the moment. I was too young and inexperienced, and I didn't follow one
Right.
of the most important rules: read the room, Connor. Be humble and read
Right.
the room. And
Yeah.
it's funny that you mentioned that because had I went out there and nailed the keynote, I probably would have went into the circuit young and ignorant. And but no,
Yeah, probably bad things would have happened if you did nail it. You probably weren't ready for it. But yeah, that's the worst feeling. I've been in that. I've bombed as well, and I know that feeling. It's really, really, it's one of the worst things in the world where you're all excited and the energy in the audience is kind of down, and it just goes further down the more you talk, and there's nothing you can do. It's one of the worst sinking feelings in the world. Yeah,
it
I
is.
know it.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. You walk out there, give them all a round of applause. Everybody's excited, and then it starts and then gone. Oh, and then you want to pretend you're professional, so you can't. You're usually professional speakers don't drink their water. I'm sitting up there shaking my hand, and it's yeah.
Oh wow.
I got a good question for you. So
Yeah.
another thing. So we're talking about human nature and all these different things. Well,
Yeah.
what would be your best advice for selling yourself? So in that moment, you met that gentleman, and he offered you the opportunity to pay for half of the book before you went public. Like, what would be your advice for somebody to sell themselves?
Well, it depends on what you're selling and where you are, right? In that particular instance, um, it was it wasn't that I was planning to write the 48 Laws of Power and that I knew exactly what I needed to do in that moment. It was kind of it just came out of me. I don't know where it came out of from me. Just ignore that noise.
Oh, no problem.
Um, so you know, but it was the fact that I was desperate enough and I seized the opportunity. But what you need to recognize when you're in situations and you're pitching something and you want to sell an idea, like I sold my idea, you have to think first of the other person. You have to think of what's in their interest, what their agenda is, what will excite them, right? So, what happened in that moment in Venice, Italy, some 20, God, so many years ago, was that the moment I spoke about power and the timelessness of it, I saw his eyes light up. I saw him get really excited. And that kind of fed me. And I go, all right, this is the right thing, right? So you want to get that feeling in people when you're pitching an idea. You want to see their body language literally shift. You want to see them, that look in their eye that they're interested. And the way to do that is to understand who they are, what motivates them, what their world is like. This particular man is a book packager. He can only package books that he thinks are going to sell, right? So if I tried to pitch him about some obscure academic idea that I had, those eyes he would have gone like that. I would have been completely different, right? So you have to think of what they want, what their world is like, what, what will make them money, what will please them, what will help them in their life. And that's what is the key to any kind of pitch. And you either have to be in the moment and kind of feel it and understand that person, or you have to do research.
Cool.
So with this particular gentleman, I didn't really have to do research. I'd been working with him several weeks. I kind of knew who he was. He's a very, very brilliant man and all that. And so I had a feeling for what would kind of work in that moment. But most situations, you don't know the person. You need to do research. You need to know, what they might be looking for, what will excite them, what are the kinds of things that they've put money in before, right? So when you're prepared, so my preparation in that moment wasn't that I had done all this research. My preparation it was like get rich or die trying. It was either sell this book, made successful, or I'd be homeless or suicidal, right? When you've got those options, I call it the death ground strategy.
Right.
You're going to make it work, right?
Right.
So that's how I was prepared.
You're like,
so either it's good.
Sorry, you were like Cortez. Go ahead, like against the wall. You're back. Burn the ships to go forward. Go ahead, though. Sorry.
Yeah, I had burned my ships, and it was like either conquer Mexico or die, right? So make the 48 laws of power or forget it, man. So that's one level of preparation, and one level that will kind of, you have to prove yourself. So it's great to have a great idea, but you also have to be able to execute it, and you have to be able to show people that if you want them to fund your business or whatever, that you have the wherewithal to actually, it might be a great idea, but are you the person to do it? Right. So in your pitch, you also have to communicate a tremendous amount of confidence, not overconfidence, but a sense of you believe in this so thoroughly that you'll make it happen, that you're the right person. So those are the kinds of things you want to think about. If you go into this pitch, having done your research, feeling excited, feeling even a little bit desperate, it'll show up in your body language, in your nonverbal communication. People will read it, and it'll have a very powerful effect.
Right. No, that's great advice. Robert, I want to ask, I know you have a brief time. Do you have time for one more question for you?
Sure.
That's excellent advice, but this is the last one. I think it's important, and you probably hear this one in interviews once in a while. If you were to go back, and again, I was laughing. So your landline, was that a landline that rang on the phone? I'm like, you're not Robert. Come on, you got the landline. I'm just joking. But the question.
Well, what do you mean? You mean I'm so old that I have a landline?
I'm a millennial. That's us millennials nowadays. We don't have the landline.
Yeah.
You're not that.
Yeah, I've been meaning to get rid of it, but I tell you, it's for my mother because she's like 94 years old, and she wants my landline in case there's an emergency. She doesn't trust my cell phone. Right. So I never use it except for that. But yeah, I am an old guy. I understand.
Oh no, I was just joking. I was like, oh,
it's all right. I can take the joke.
I just want to make sure. Like, never mind. But my last question to you would be, if you were to go back in your life, so again, take all your successes, everything else like that, what would you tell your younger self right now specifically? What would you tell that person?
Well, I'm not a great believer in like regrets. I have a philosophy in life that I call amor fati, which is the Latin for the love of fate. And what it means is everything in your life basically happens for a reason, and you just have to recognize what that reason is for. So what I would do and go back to that 21-year-old Robert is to basically say, Robert, you're going in the right direction. Don't worry about everything will work out. But I don't even think I would do that. You know what? I would probably just completely ignore him. And I would like not even tell him that I'm there and I'm because I didn't want to mess with the karma that was already occurring, People, it doesn't matter what you do in your life. It matters how you look at it. Or I'm sorry, it doesn't matter what happens to you in life. It matters what you do with the various circumstances. So if you have some clarity early on about what you were meant to achieve, what I call your life's task, and you know that this is the path you're on, and that path is never straight, it's going to be like zigzagging from job, career to career until you find what works for you, then it doesn't matter if you make mistakes, because mistakes are good. Mistakes teach you. Failure teaches you. You're bombing in that front of that audience, your first speaker's engagement. That was a major learning experience for you. You'll never forget it. It's like it's embedded in your chemistry now. You have that feeling, right?
Right.
Mistakes are good. Failure is good. Doing wrong things is okay. When you're young, you want to be adventurous. You want to try things. As long as you have a general idea of what you want, where you're headed in life. For me, it was writing. It could have been any form of writing. I didn't know, but I tried everything. But if you have no clarity in life, then it's very difficult, and it's very hard to know what is right or wrong. But I had that clarity, and I wouldn't want to go back in time and mess with it, because if I had whispered into little Robert's ear, everything will be fine, don't worry about it, I might have like made me really complacent, and I might have like not tried as hard, right?
Right.
There was a reason things happened the way they did, and I think it came out the right way. There was a purpose behind me being lost for so many years, So I think the most important thing is recognizing what you're meant to accomplish in life, and basically trusting fate and what happens to you, and how to kind of learn from your experiences.
No, that's excellent advice, Robert. No, thank you very much. Honestly, this has been great.
Uh,
And I want to be very respectful of your time. For
uh,
everybody out there, guys, I'm going to put a link here at the end for the Daily Laws. Honestly, I read
yeah,
all Robert's books. Robert, I have to say, and I mean this, and this is off the mic, everything. It's been an
yeah.
honor being able to sit across from you and get
Oh
inside
yeah,
your mind. Like I said, for years I've been
yes,
reading books, and it's funny that I've always been inspired by looking throughout history. You see inside the minds of
uh,
these great authors, and to
uh-huh.
actually get to talk to you in person, it's
Oh no, it's been a real pleasure for me. You have some great stories too. I'm sure you. I have to get copies of your book somehow, but that's been really fun.
no, I appreciate it. One day I want to be able to actually shake your hand in person.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Guys.
I love Toronto. I've only been there once. I gave it. You're in Toronto, right?
Right, a little bit north, but say right there, so it's not too bad.
Oh, okay. Well, I gave a talk there back in I think 2014, and the person who came after me was Tony Robbins himself.
I
I
love
was the lead into Tony Robbins. Like, whoa.
it. Yeah.
And believe me, compared to him, I completely bombed. There were 5,000 people. I mean, it was a good talk. It wasn't like your experience, but they were amused. And then he comes on stage, and it's like, I don't know, this entertainer that's insane, and
I know.
everyone's going crazy. They weren't going crazy for me, they were going crazy for him. So that was quite an experience. But I love Toronto and that area.
Canada's great. We got some great people. We're a little bit softer than more of the world in a sense, but it's good. But
Well, that's nice. That's a good thing.
yeah, the difference between you and Tony is you're just well thought out. Tony's like you said, the entertainer. It's like a live EDM concert coming on, and
Oh, he's
yeah,
like a rock star or something. Yeah.
no, totally. I'm gonna put a link here, guys. Again, to the Daily Laws. I'll put it
Yeah.
at the bottom here. Robert, thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on the show.